Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to If Plants Could Talk. This is Garrett. I'm your host. This conversation took place on March 5th, 2023, with my very special guest, Cactuscon. Jim joined me virtually today from his home in Tucson, Arizona. He is a collector of cacti, mostly columnar. He loves Trichocereus. I think that's what he said got him started, but also has a variety of different types of plants in his collection. Jim is an awesome friend of mine. We've been developing a friendship over Instagram for the last year or so, probably. And I would say that he's actually become kind of part of my support network. And I remember like the first time I talked to Jim, we had never really even spoken. And I was in the middle of a crisis. And he stayed on the phone with me for like an hour plus. So Jim is super awesome, and I'm really grateful to have been able to have him on the show today. It feels really good to be back. I haven't podcasted since November, and we did end up having connection issues, but it's an improvement from the setup I had before. I still got to work out some kinks. I got to move it around. Thankfully, I can move my internet around this little dish and find the best spot, and I haven't gotten there yet, but I will clean this up to the best of my ability. Hopefully, you guys won't even notice. And I want to take a moment to tell you guys about my sponsors. If you scroll down into the description of this episode, you will find links to Mezcala Nursery, located in Long Beach, California, Green Touch Nursery, located in Bellflower, California. Big shout out to plantly.io. You can type in plantly.io into your web browser or download the free Plantly app on Android or iOS. If you are interested in becoming a vendor, I have provided a link for you to do so down there in the description. Scroll down, click the link, become a vendor. Also, Real Mushrooms is a mushroom supplement company offering extracts in both powder and capsule form. You can use my link if plants could talk at checkout, or just wait, you could use my code if plants could talk at checkout, or just click the link in the description of this episode and you will get 10% off all orders. That's it. Okay, here's Jim. We're going to start then. All right. Hi, Jim. Welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you.
Good to be here, man. How are you?
I am fantastic now that I'm here with you, man. This is the first episode in probably 4 months. I don't know, since November. So, and the fact that it's working too, it's just the blessing. And it's raining. My Wi-Fi used to not work when it was raining. It's working great. So, thank you.
You're on the new satellite connection, the Starlink.
Yeah, thank you, Elon Musk. As controversial as he may be, I'm a fan.
There you go, man. There you go. Glad you're back in business.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here with CAC Tucson. I would assume that means that you're speaking to me from Tucson, Arizona.
Yep. I thought it was super clever when I came up with it, and then it was supposed to be temporary, and then I got lazy, and now I'm stuck with it.
Nice, man. Are you born and raised in Tucson?
Born in Modesto, California,
Oh,
but
wow.
been in Tucson since I was like 5 months old.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool. Nice,
and
man.
I tell everybody I was born and raised here. Usually,
We had a glitch for a moment, but we're back. So, coming up in Tucson, I imagine you were surrounded by cactus, were a pretty normal thing to see.
yeah, and for the better part of 35 years, I hated cactus.
Did you?
Yeah, got lots of stories of actually probably my worst story is when I was like 6 years old. I was on a bike ride with my dad, and I went into a big patch of cholla, and my mom and dad had to spend about 4 or 5 hours pulling needles out of me.
Oh
I
my
still remember it
God.
very vividly.
Dude, I've seen videos of that, but I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone that it's actually happened.
Dude, it's just like that Instagram or whatever video, that viral video of that bicyclist that was in a race that tore off into a patch of choya, just like that.
Dude, I put my hand in one time and got like 10 little stingers, so I can't imagine with your like full force of your body going into that thing. That's
Yeah, it's
funny.
probably very traumatizing. It probably explains a lot.
I can see why you hated cactus. That makes sense.
Yeah, all the opuntias grow very they're very prolific out here, and yeah, it's not a day out here that you don't get glaucids in your hands.
Nice, man. And so it took 35 years for you to get into cactus. I don't want to jump ahead too far if there's more to explore. But I am curious. So, did you first notice those plants? Like, when did you start appreciating plants? When did how did it evolve into hatred into maybe appreciation? And then eventually we can go to collection. But I know you told me about a story yesterday that brought you to cactus. I don't know. Where do you want to go from here? You want to go there?
Well, my mom always had plants,
Mm,
and she always tried to get me plants and get me into gardening.
mm,
But I didn't really get fully into gardening until about 8 years ago.
mm-hmm,
Um, I quit drinking. I used to drink a lot.
mm.
And a couple of years after that, I don't know, I had a very strange dream in which I was petting a cactus and I was giggling.
Wow.
And I woke up in the morning and I was giggling when I woke up. And oh, okay, that was pretty strange. But the remainder of the day, I was in a really good mood, and I kept thinking about that and just laughing how stupid and silly that was. And later that night, I was watching a documentary on hydrocactus, and as soon as that sucker popped up, um, I immediately went, holy shit, that is the cactus that I had a dream of, and I was petting that cactus. And so a couple weeks later, I bought my first San Pedro, and then I fell into a huge collection after that, and that's kind of where it started.
What a trip, man. That's bizarre, but I believe it to be true. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was,
It's like you were called to them. And
I don't know, or it's just a weird coincidence, one or the other.
yeah. Now, prior to, so eventually the plants became a part of your recovery, I would imagine, and I've heard you say. And but prior to that, what were you doing to kind of stay sober, and how were you maintaining that for those first couple years before you turned to cactus?
Well, as many people who aren't or who are alcoholics or in substance abuse, I've got particular character traits that make me kind of lean towards addictive behavior.
Mm,
And so I just took that addictive behavior towards alcohol and I just shifted it to other healthier things. And my particular preference is long distance running. And so I did that I was always a runner, but I did it really hard for about 4 years, 3 years, something like that. And then I got injured significantly, and that ended my running. And I needed something new, and that's when cactus just kind of popped up into my life or gardening.
you tore your Achilles tendon, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
Yeah, I would say that's a significant injury.
yeah. It was a bummer. It was a bummer. Uh, there's nothing like an injury like that to make you feel old immediately. So
Mm.
it was a shocker for sure.
Now, was it mostly probably because you're just running so much? Like
Yeah, I was
wear and
overdoing it.
tear? Yeah.
Didn't know my limits. Thought I was invincible. Yeah,
Sounds like addictive
all of the above.
behavior. Oh man, that's intense. And how long of a recovery was that?
It still is, to be honest. I mean, I still have
Wow.
to nurse it a little bit. I do daily exercises to try to keep it loose. Very painful, but it started to get me back to normal pretty quick.
Mm, mm. And so did you utilize any other type of like community resources, or did you just, you know, turn to the running? Was there anything else? Did you ever do like AA or anything like that?
I did not. So years and years ago, I kind of dabbled with AA, mainly out of curiosity. I've always been fascinated with I've always been fascinated with people who are addicted to things, and I've always been fascinated with ways to break that up. So I just did it out of curiosity, but I realized very quickly that that wasn't a route that I particularly wanted to take. Um, yeah, so no, I basically just quit and I leaned really hard on my family and friends
Yeah.
at that time.
Well, I wholeheartedly respect that, man. I could see how AA could actually really be beneficial for someone that doesn't have family to lean on, or maybe doesn't have the greatest support network, and then you can build one in that group. And I had a similar experience, but I kind of dove into it head first because my treatment center I went to uh, forced us to do 7 AA meetings a week. And it wasn't particularly my favorite way to be brought into something, considering I like to control things. But uh, I did it, and I did the whole sponsor thing. I got sponsees, eventually relapsed, which had nothing to do with AA, but I totally respect that program, and I'm real familiar with it, but it's not really my thing either. There's various reasons that we've talked about on the podcast before, like sitting around and talking about everything that happened over and over again every day. Um, just rehashing it all the time is not particularly my favorite way to deal with it. And I don't know, politics of it. There's a lot of reasons. Perhaps even it's like rigid. I feel like the ideology is pretty rigid. It's like recovery is very black and white there. Um, how open are you to talking about ceremonial medicinal things? Have you done any of that?
Um, to back up, just to stay on the AA thing super quick, thinking of what you've done is very beneficial as just kind of a kick in the ass to get going or to get sober. But I think afterwards, I think dwelling on those negative experiences can have the opposite effect. I'm sure it's beneficial for a lot of people, but yeah, that's particularly why I didn't enjoy it too much. Um,
I agree with that.
I'm I've never really practiced anything ceremoniously. Um, I don't know. I suppose my outlook on uh, sacred plants, medicinal plants, is might be slightly different than a lot of people that are in that space. No, I have not done anything that's like ceremonious.
Yeah, but have you utilized any of that?
I have, yeah, yeah, with great success, and actually they're mushrooms in particular, which I don't dabble in anymore, but those were the single biggest factor to why I quit drinking.
Nice. You know, you're
Yeah,
not the first person to say that here. That's cool.
I, it wasn't even on my radar.
Mhm.
And then I was out in the mountains, and I had a very hellish journey. Basically, they just put this idea front and center in my mind that I needed to make a change and be a better person, and that the way I was living was not going to cut it anymore, and I needed to do better. And they and they didn't say it nicely. It was very cruel.
Did you have maybe perhaps like visions of things that you did? Kind of, they have a way of showing you all the things that you don't necessarily want to look at, whether it be metaphorically, sometimes directly.
Yeah, not visions of what I did, but visions of who I was in
Mm,
light of that. Um, I don't know. It's been such a long time since I've thought about those days.
yeah.
And partly is that I don't remember a lot of it because I was just genuinely out of control, you know.
Mm, mm. Yeah, man, I relate. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of lost time, and it's nice to be back and level headed and clear and like focused on what matters. I know you got a family. That's a big motivator for me for sure. I don't think if I didn't have kids, I don't think I would have ever made it out of that. And a lot of people say like, oh, how could you? I've heard people say things like, if I had kids, I wouldn't have ever became an addict, and it doesn't work like that. Nobody chooses to be an addict, but today I'm super grateful. I just took like 9 months last Sunday, so I had a pretty nasty relapse recently, and I was on and off for like 6 months after almost 3 years. I had 3 years sober, and then I went out for about 6 months, and I had a very public relapse at that. I decided it was a good idea to go on the air and do podcasts with people that I respect and that I care for, and that are respected members of this community, and I felt like I made a fool of myself. So it was it was a pretty harsh reality check to have such a public relapse. you know.
Looking back on that, congratulations, by the way, for your
Thank
nine
you.
months. Freaking awesome. Um, do you how do you feel about that now, looking back on it, that that was 9 months ago? Do you feel like the publicity of it was a benefit? Do you think it helped you at all?
Absolutely. Because the pressure, I wanted to get back to this. This has become such a big part of my life, and has really given me a lot of purpose, and I wanted to get back to this so badly. And I mean, I guess I kind of never steered away from it, even though I was using, but it was a push that I needed to stop because I was feeling very embarrassed and ashamed, and I don't like to disrespect people in this day and age, and I also felt like I was kind of throwing my platform off a cliff, and just pretty reckless. So yeah, it was a big contributing factor in me getting clean again was the podcast, and of course other things too. But seeing myself like that, going back and reviewing it, I can't watch it today. There's no way. I'll probably delete it if I take a look at it now. But what it made me do is it made me take a big step back. And so when I got clean, I just stopped podcasting altogether, and I took like a big break and kind of went inward and went back to the plants, and spent a lot of time with my family. So these last 9 months have been really like revolutionary for me. I feel like it needed to happen. I've had like a lot of big changes, and it gave me the push to move. I drastically changed almost everything in my life, and quit my job, moved out of my house that I was in for 7 years, and have started like a whole new life. And it's what I needed for sure.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, okay, enough of this recovery stuff. So you turned into the plants. You had this dream, you saw the cactus, and you were you had spent some time already sober by that point, right? You were like a couple years into your sobriety, and you started
Yeah, probably
collecting
4 years.
plants. 4
Yeah,
years.
yeah, 3, 4 years. I can't remember. It's all haze.
What did it start with? What kind of cactus did you get?
San Pedro. Those are my favorite. So
Nice.
whether it's Pachinoy or DCI or Peruvianus,
Anus? Peruvian anus?
Peruvianus, tomato, tomato.
I got one in.
You slipped it in. You
Jim
slipped
said
in the.
no anus jokes, but I got one.
Uh, yeah,
That's
man, those
cool,
are
man.
those are those are definitely my favorite. There's multiple reasons for why I like growing them, but they're definitely my favorite.
Yeah. Well, what do you think drew you to them? I don't know, man.
Well, just I mean, to be blunt, I mean the psychedelic nature of them was what
Yes.
drew me in. That is
Yes.
what drew me in for sure. And then the more I grew them, the more I just became fascinated with how they look. Like right now, my everything's opening back up since spring's on its way, and they all just they glow this beautiful like nuclear like Slimer green, at the tips, and they're just gorgeous, gorgeous, and the flowers are gorgeous.
Yes. I love when they got that really deep blue glaucous hue, and then when the new growth is coming in, it like kind of it's like a gradient into that light green that you were talking about. It has that new
Yeah,
growth right on the tip. I love that. I'm actually starting to see some new growth now.
and they don't have glaucids. I like that about
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And they can take lots of water or no water. They're very resilient. They don't rot
Yeah,
too
man.
much.
Yeah. Columnar are not like the most popular sector in the plant community, and that's what drew me in too. I love them. And for whatever reason, I feel like they don't get the love that they should have.
Well, like I feel like the cactus community is this weird crossroads where you have some plant nerds that are just super into different species and different mutations, and then you have like the psychedelic community. and they all kind of just meet in this big smorgasbord of a cactus community.
Yeah.
I always thought that that was kind of neat. But in particular, I really like lophoforas, um,
Yes.
and those things are just super endangered. And I feel like as the landscape of psychedelics changes in our country over the next 10, 15 years, and things become a little more legal here, a little more legal there, that those are going to become even more endangered as
Yeah.
people seek them out. And so by growing um, Trichocereus or Echinopsis or whatever it is, um, that may kind of uh, offset the endangerment of Lophophora.
Yeah, it's a fantastic alternative. And if I were to choose between the two plants and using them ceremoniously or medicinally out of my own collection, I'm not going to kill a loaf. I have no problem cutting a foot of my San Pedro cactus, because they grow 1 to 2 feet per year, so it's like no big deal, right? Much more
Mhm.
sustainable. And I don't know. There's something I've always been more drawn to the San Pedro for some reason. I don't know. When I was like a teenager, I started Googling them, and I don't know how I heard about it. I think I saw it on the internet or something, and never really got one until a few years ago. But
There you are.
it is. I was saying you don't strike me as the type of person that is super nerdy about names and cultivars. Maybe am I getting that right?
I'm a nerd, but not that big of a nerd.
Yeah. So you just
No,
love collecting them and growing them,
I do remember a lot of them for sure. Like
right?
if I have friends over looking at my collection, I can't help but be like, "Oh, this is blah blah blah. This is blah blah blah." But if you get me in a room full of other plant nerds, I will be the dumbest person in the room.
Me too, man. Me too. Yeah. I don't know. There's just something I just like plants, man. I don't care if they're in a nice pot. I don't care if they look pretty, you know. I just like them. I like them being around. I like watching them grow. Um, some of my pots have burn holes in them from
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
putting smoldering sage into the pot, thinking that that's a good place to put it, and then it like melts a hole in the side of my pot. So
It's a good place for a little bit.
yeah, maybe as long as it's away from the plastic.
Yeah, no, what's funny is when I first started growing plants, I was super obsessive, right? And I would obsess over every little thing, and I would worry about every little thing, and I killed a whole bunch of plants. And killing plants is probably the best thing to do to learn how to grow plants, right?
Yes.
Um, and I think that's probably like of all the weird little life lessons that you learn from gardening. That's probably my favorite one is to not try to control them so much. Just let them do their thing. Some of them will die, and that's okay. But if you're just approaching it from a place of love rather than fear of them dying,
Hmm.
like you'll have a much better shot and a much happier garden. You know.
You're absolutely right. I learned that too. And like when I neglect my plants, I tend to be more amazed at how well they're doing than when I'm like super on it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, there's certain things that like I gotta give a little more focus to, like seedlings and stuff like that I'm doing now. But even then, like yeah, the less I pay attention to them, the better they do. And I imagine you're learning a lot facing elements with certain species of cactus and different uh types, like right, growing in Tucson.
Yeah, I learned that I'm a terrible plant dad. I learned that last week. We had a nice big snowstorm. Well, for Tucson, snowstorm. It's more like maybe a snow flurry.
Is that common?
Um, yeah, yeah. We get at least one decent snow a year probably, but it's not like other parts of the country. We might get like 2 inches or half an inch or something. So if it sticks, then everybody in Tucson loses their mind. Like, oh my gosh, it snowed. Everybody else would be like, you guys are idiots. Um, but yeah, I got home from work at like 7 o'clock at night. It was windy, it was rainy, and I just kind of looked at all my plants and went, "Well, you guys are on your own." And then apparently it started snowing at 11. and I woke up the next morning at 4 thinking I might be able to do something about it. And I got out there and everything was just covered. And I went, well, I guess we'll see what happens. So, knock on wood, fingers crossed. Hopefully, everything's. I'll find out next week how many die.
Yeah. I feel like the Tricos tend to be able to handle it well, especially if you had them acclimated and they've lived there for now several seasons or whatever, you know. Um,
Yeah, all of mine are outside,
yeah.
so they just go through the sun and go through the cold, and you um, desert weather is very well, it's very up and down, right? So there's like a 30-degree temperature swing
Mm,
every day,
yeah.
typically. And I found some plants don't. I think that temperature swing has an effect on some plants, but yeah, most of the trikes don't seem to mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I've killed several plants since moving here because we get deck frost. I was telling you yesterday, and for some reason there'll just be like a layer of frost on everything, and like any water that's around turns into ice. And the tricos haven't. I haven't killed a single trico. I had one rot, but I was able to save it. And I think part of the shock that I experienced was that I moved from like sunny SoCal to the mountains, and it was too fast of a change for them. They were used to being in a hoop house, one, so they never got rained on. I had to have hand water, and now suddenly they're getting dumped on and frozen at nighttime. So I killed a shitload of plants, dude. And a lot of my house plants are
Did
dying. And I'm devastated
you
because one of them
notice?
was my grandma's plant. I killed it.
Oh, bummer. Did you notice on a smaller scale if you went through a similar change when you moved up
Y-
there?
yes, I've just gotten to the point where I feel like I'm acclimated. Literally, like this past week has been different. I don't know. As we're transitioning into spring, perhaps is what it is. We've had some sunnier days. We've also had some crazy rains and flooding. But like at first it was kind of dramatic. We had like we were coming out of some drama, personal issues, and then things kind of settled down, and we don't have central heating. We have like space heaters, and it's fucking cold. So we had to get used to that, and we learned the hard way, like with a big power bill, that we can't run them all three of them at night all night. And like all these little things, and there's like drama kind of butting heads a little bit, adjusting. We're in a much smaller space, but I've come to now we're
But
like
a bigger outdoor space though,
much
right?
bigger outdoor space. Yes.
That's a good trade-off.
Yeah. So I've gotten rid of a lot of material shit and kind of like gone back to basics and started like foraging food, growing food, foraging mushrooms. And yeah, I feel like I'm kind of blossoming right now. Like at first it was like kind of we were buried, and now it's like we've sprouted and we're kind of pushing in our roots into this area now and getting used to it. So it's nice, man. And the commute and stuff and all that too is different. So it's a big change, but exactly what I needed, man. And
Or drive, or not being able to drive through a flash flood. That was probably a little different for you.
yeah, it was a little traumatic, honestly. Like my lady got stranded in a flood, and like people were getting water rescued. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. And like I couldn't, I was driving. There's two ways to my house, right? I drove the back way up, and I got 1 mile from her where she was stranded in a flood, and the fucking fire department turned me around. They're like, "Nope, you can't go in." And I was like, "Fuck, dude!" And I like wished I had a snorkel on my car at the time because I would have just said "fuck you guys" and punched it. I had to go all the way around.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I've been caught in a flash flood before. And,
Have you?
yep, yep. It's it's scary, man.
Yeah,
Water's no joke.
it's a little more fairly common for you, right? You guys get like torrential rains.
Yep, every year we get flash floods. That's what we do over here. Tucson is surrounded by mountains all around, right?
Uh-huh.
I live particularly close to two of those mountain ranges, and yeah, when it rains, you gotta always be aware of where the washes are and like where you are in respect to where you gotta go. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. We spent a lot of time hunkering down. Like we can't go anywhere, you know. And similar, I guess, to the pandemic. How did you deal with the pandemic? Did it change your life at all?
Honestly, Aside from the fact that I got divorced,
Ooh,
everything else was freaking amazing. I had a great pandemic.
me too, actually.
No, I feel so guilty saying that because I know a lot of people
Yeah, I
not.
know. I
Um,
know.
I had kind of like an ass backwards experience from everybody else. I worked from home for 4 years, uh, and then the pandemic hit, and I was already working from home, and I was like, oh well, nothing changes for me. This is fine. And then in September of 2020, September, I decided to go back to work. I'm a plumber slash electrician,
Hmm.
and so I went from working at home and being in this like little safe bubble to being out and about and working at all sorts of people's houses and getting to see all these different perspectives from different people,
Mm,
uh, ranging from people who were terrified to people who didn't care, people who were super selfish and wanted us to wear masks and stuff inside their home, but they weren't wearing masks. And
mm,
very quickly, I just realized I didn't have time to be worried about it. If you work in construction, you're more worried about stuff that's within your control. Like if I'm grinding cast iron, I don't want to breathe that in. If I
right.
if I'm on an extension ladder with a big old piece of pipe, I don't want to fall off that ladder. Like those things are those dangers are much more real and something I can wrap my head around.
Mm,
Um, and if you're too busy being afraid of something that you have no control over, it takes your eye off the ball with the things that you're actually doing that could hurt you immediately.
yes.
Um, so so yeah, I just didn't really worry about it
That
essentially.
that's a fascinating insight. I like that. It reminds me, similarly to what I saw on the streets with the homeless community, is that they were not worried about the pandemic.
No,
They
they
are
got
worried
bigger things.
about people, shooting at them or throwing bottles, throwing glass bottles. I saw that numerous times. They're trying to get shelter, whatever, trying to stay warm, trying to eat, you know. So yeah,
And
I
I,
totally
I
understand
think
that.
I mean I don't know this for a fact, but I think from what I remember reading is that the deaths and severe COVID stuff didn't hit the homeless community that hard.
You're
That
right.
homeless
They
people
didn't catch it
actually,
as much. Yeah,
yeah,
which is interesting.
or maybe they did, and it's masked behind overdoses and all sorts of. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, they're
Honestly,
probably
I'm
less
throwing
likely to
fingers
go
here.
get tested. They're less likely to go get care, right? So who
Mhm.
knows is right. But yeah, I mean, being outside, that's such a touchy subject. I think we're rounding a corner on it though. We're coming to, we're getting to a point where we can talk about it more openly. I have very strong opinions on the pandemic, but
Do
I
you?
like I like my platform.
Tell me about all your opinions, Eric. Come on, man.
Uh, I mean, I'll say this. I think that they lied to us. I think that they utilized it to gain control and to make a lot of drastic changes in the same way that they utilize a lot of emergencies to change laws. And I think that uh, we're seeing some facts come out about what the implications of using a treatment that was still in like its early stages, and perhaps we shouldn't have been so aggressive about mandating and forcing it on people. I got it, and thank God I'm okay after what I'm reading and what I'm seeing. And this is not conspiratorial. This is fact. Uh, I am grateful to be okay after taking that.
I think that everything you said is all very, very possible. I do. My thoughts have always been slightly less cynical, a little more. Well, I think what I was telling people, as far as my opinion from the get-go, was that the COVID response um, is exactly what happens when you have a combination of three factors. You have uh, stupid people, scared people, and lawyers. And you put those three together, and all sorts of terrible things begin to happen. And the system breaks down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to their credit, it was very new. It's not something we've experienced in our lifetime. And so, I understand why things went haywire and why people lost their shit. But and I learned a lot from it myself too. But yeah, anyways, I'm glad that we're coming out of it. California just ended their state of emergency the other day, finally.
What was the emergency?
Oh, COVID.
Sorry, man. I live in Arizona. It's been the Wild West out here from the beginning.
Yeah, man.
Everybody, I live in Trump country, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I know you're friends with Rachel Sucklab. She's like, what'd you guys call that thing again that y'all were doing in California, but we never did it here? Oh, lockdowns.
Yeah, yeah. Guy, there's a lot of people. Like I was saying, I work in construction, and it was kind of. I'll say this: it was very fascinating, and I'm not going to say what was the right approach and what wasn't, but it was very fascinating to see the dynamic of like a family that was terrified of COVID and taking all in their minds, the necessary precautions. And then people who weren't scared of COVID and in fact were thwarting whatever the government said. It's very interesting to see how content and happy one was versus the other. The
Yeah.
people that were terrified of it were terrified of it. They
Hmm.
were terrified of their own family, their own friends.
Hmm.
Um, they were terrified of themselves. They didn't want to be somebody who gave a disease to somebody else. Um, but they also did not have family time and didn't have any way to kind of get rid of all that nervous energy. And so I think
Yeah.
they had a lot of problems that manifested from that. Whether it's your kids not going to school and then suffering because of that, or just a lack of humans are social creatures, and uh, I don't care who you are. If you're not around for a long time, it's going to have negative effects on you.
Yeah. Well, I think the implications of that are really kind of still unfolding and will be unfolding for years to come. And we will see that. And it to some degree, I blame the media for that. But um, yeah, I totally understand why people were fearful, and I'll respect whatever approach you did decide to take. That's another thing too, is that it was so polarizing that it was like either you're with us or against us kind of thing, and that was never really my view. You're frozen, huh? Are you? Yeah, you're frozen. I was saying it's such a polarizing time, and I totally understand why people were fearful, and I respect whatever approach you did decide to use. And there was this energy that was so strong. It was like us versus them, and only my opinion's right. And that certainly was never my stance. I was pretty neutral on everything. Like if you wanted to mask up, you
Yeah.
didn't want to mask up. I don't give a shit. You do whatever you want to
Whatever
do.
makes you feel comfortable,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
And it's
My
sad to
son,
see how many people get sucked into one
yeah,
side or the other.
yeah, and everybody goes to IamRight.com
Uh-huh.
to back up all their arguments. My son, so from the very get-go, I have a 14-year-old son, and from the very get-go, I just told him, no matter what, dude, just don't be afraid of this. Everything's gonna be okay. We got this. And maybe a year in, um, there was a big outbreak at my son's school,
Hmm.
and a whole bunch of his friends got tested positive. And I have a schedule with my son's mother, and we do a week on, week off. And in fact, I get him back today at 5, and they'll have him until next Sunday. Anyways,
Nice.
I got him back right when we found out that everybody tested positive, and so um, I decided to do what I thought was the right thing, and so we stayed home for a week
Yeah.
since we were both exposed. Anyways, I remember when he told me that, and then I got a letter or not a letter, a call from school. Um, I remember just laughing and going, dude, we're going to get COVID together. It's going to be the two of us, man. It's going to be awesome. And, and I just tried to keep a positive.
Yeah.
outlook, and no reason to be worried about it. We
Yeah.
we take care of ourselves. We're super healthy. We got this. And what else can you do, man? There's no reason to live in fear, and I would do the same if I got diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, and as terrible as that would be. And you know,
Yeah,
I
I
don't know if that's
appreciate that.
the right approach or not, but yeah, that's my approach.
No, I think there's some power to you're taking the power away from it, whatever it may be. And
Mhm.
yeah, I would imagine that that attitude actually would be beneficial in recovery too. And like recovery hasn't always been this like really miserable thing for me. It's like I try to really have it be lighthearted and kind of normalize it. So totally understand that, man. I want to move on and close out, but I want to ask about like what else do you like to do in your spare time? Because I feel like we have a lot of similarities in that we like to spend time outside, and I see you like at the river all the time or a creek. Like, what else do you like to
Yeah.
do besides for garden?
Well, I play music,
Oh,
play
nice.
guitar, and write music. Um,
That's
it's
cool.
not particularly good, but that's probably my favorite hobby. But it comes and goes.
Mm,
Oddly enough, I usually only write music when I'm sad. That's when it comes out, and that's kind of my way of dealing with grief or melancholy or nostalgia.
yeah.
Um, and then yeah, I do a lot of running, working out, being up in the mountains, a lot of hiking, a lot of backpacking. Um, when we have water at our local canyons and water holes, we go out and go kayaking or cliff jumping, and yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
probably my.
saw a video of your son jumping off of a rock one time and you were like cheering and stuff, and I think that's awesome, man. You seem like that's a important thing to you, fatherhood, and you're real present
You
with
know,
him.
I'm very torn, and you're probably going to be torn along these same lines too, I would think, which is that I don't know what the correct way to parent is. I don't think anybody does,
Yeah.
but in this particular aspect of uh, do I pump my kid full of technology and have him embrace where we're going,
Hmm.
or do I keep him rooted in the past so that he can understand where we came from? But I feel like if I do that too much, then I'm like keeping him away from where the world's going.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a constant that is a constant battle that I have. But I try to get him outside as much as possible and embrace suffering as much as possible. Kind of put aside the convenience and comfort of modern life
Yeah.
to try to learn who he is, because our modern life and all the comforts, it's very distracting. It's very hard to get to the core of who you are, to get to find any kind of self-discipline, self-reflection, self-awareness. Um, yeah, I totally went off on a tangent, and I don't
No,
even know what I was.
I loved it. I loved that tangent, and yeah, that's like a little mini crisis that I feel like a lot of parents are facing right now because we, at least I know you're a little bit older than me, but like we didn't always have the internet, and we didn't certainly didn't always have social media, and to some degree it's like such a significant part of their lives now and a significant part of our lives. And you're frozen, but I was saying that I face that similar to you, and I think many parents face now with this huge technological era. And as I get older, I start to find that more and more I want to go back to the old ways. More and more I want to be in nature and go back to our roots. And I wish I had learned some of the things that I'm learning now, like identifying plants in nature nearby or edible mushrooms. I want to learn how to hunt, all these things that have kind of been forgotten in our society, right? And I want my kids to grow up that way and to have that. Um, and to some degree, like it sounds like you don't want to shelter them, because I remember being a kid telling me not to do something made me want to do it more, right? If something was like taboo. And there's got to be like a balance and harmony to that. I'm sure that we can find, and that you're finding is like a little bit of both worlds, right? And I certainly don't want my kid on social media before 14. I think that that's like something that I want to be rigid about.
Mm.
Um, I just don't think it's
My
good
son
for you.
still has a flip phone,
See, okay, that's the way to go, bro.
and he hates it.
I bet he
And
does,
it's
but it's
hard.
for his own good.
Yeah, and he's not missing anything. He ain't missing
You want to go on social media, log on like we used to. Remember when you used to have to go on the computer to go on MySpace? You had to
anything.
be on a computer in order to
Yeah,
even
yeah.
see social media. I
I
liked
didn't
that.
have a cell phone until I was like 25 years old.
Wow.
Pretty weird. Hey, let me ask you a question, Garrett.
Yeah.
In your sobriety, do you have a harder time with the highs or the lows?
The lows, but the highs scare me. Highs scare me because I'm so used to when I get to the top of this metaphorical ladder that it gets ripped out from under me. Um, and the more I say that, probably the more true it becomes. I shouldn't say it, but that's a pattern that I've noticed.
Hmm.
I'm apparently not allowed to just stay happy, and I don't think anybody experiences full pure bliss or happiness, but um, yeah, the lows tend to be really hard for me because and it's always when that ladder gets pulled out from under me because I'll be building this foundation and this metaphorical house and everything is good and my energy especially. I think that energy is a big part of your question. Like if my energy's messed up, my head's messed up, everything's messed up, and everything's out of whack and harmony. And so I kind of feed off how I'm feeling energetically every day. I'm like almost maybe obsessive about it. Like if there's like a little bit of negativity, I'm like, where's that coming from?
Hmm.
I'm like protect myself at all costs. I don't like going in public for that reason. I try to stay away from people.
Yeah,
um,
I hear you.
but yeah, lows for me are tough, and uh, I tend to be like extroverted sometimes when I'm in a low, and
Hmm.
to a fault. Maybe I'll overshare, and then I'll like question myself, why did you say that on the internet?
Almost
Or
like a manic episode of some sort, like
yeah,
a
but
mini.
it's like to cope, I'll like overly indulge in social media. And that's something that I've kind of take real back lately.
Mhm.
But yeah, I get suicidal and stuff, man. So lows are hard for
Do,
me.
do, do you still?
I haven't since I've moved. Not I haven't had a single episode of suicidality, but leading up to it, yeah. Right before I moved. Yeah. And ketamine treatment has helped me with that. Anytime I start
Okay.
feeling suicidal, I put together $600 and go get a ketamine injection. And it
Hmm.
almost instantly snaps you right out of it.
Yeah, you know what's funny is, well, I don't know if it's funny. No, it is funny. Ketamine when I was younger was like my favorite drug.
Yeah.
Um, I read about it somewhere. This is like almost like pre-nerd. I don't know, I don't remember where I read about it, but so I was fascinated by it. And what I used to do is I'd sneak down to Mexico and get ketamine. This was way before. Um, and then I didn't go to like some therapy session.
Right, right,
Like I
right.
was just like, okay, so I'd take a beer cap and I'd
Uh-huh.
pour some out of the vial and then I'd chug it. And I'd be, I'd be out and about or I'd be in my room and that was my ketamine therapy. And
Yeah.
I had like multiple out of body experiences and was
Yes.
just fascinated with it. It changed. It was like an introduction into the world of psychedelics. Um,
Mhm.
and I remember reading a news report, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, that they were going to start using ketamine for for medicinal reasons. And I just was like, yes, I knew it. I knew it this whole time.
I was on to something.
But yeah, yeah, I get a kick out of like, uh, yeah, I wish it was, I don't know. I don't know. It's a toss up, but I wish it was more available for people. I wish it didn't cost $600 or $900 or
Yeah.
some vast amount that. especially people who are in poverty. I truly believe, I truly believe that psychedelics are a way. They're not the way. They're just one of many. But they are a way for people to get in touch with with a spiritual sense of self.
Yes.
Um, and I think with whether it's homeless people or addicts, they often are the same. And even people who are polarized these days on one side
Yeah.
or the other, just they're so sure that they're right.
Yeah.
And because they're so sure that they're right, anything that happens in the face of that is wrong. You know,
You're absolutely right, man. At the very least, if you're not like if you don't identify with spirituality, it can at least get you in touch with like your higher self, your more authentic self. If you don't want to look at it in that way, it can just make you a better person, right? And more open-minded and open your heart, more kind and more compassionate. And that's why I'm grateful that I started those so young, is that I feel like that was always kind of a part of me, was to be more compassionate. I had times where I was like radically liberal though, and like was like screaming off the top of the cliffs, but I was young, and now I'm a little bit more sensible when it comes to politics. But I think you're right about the polarization, and I think to some degree that's like narcissism. Narcissism was on the rise in our society. I just listened to this podcast about it the other day. Like extreme narcissism is growing rapidly, as you can see with the influencers, and all the selfie holics and stuff like that. But I think that to some degree, you thinking that your perspective is the only correct way is a narcissistic trait, and psychedelics can help with that for sure.
they certainly can, and it's like they have a built-in safety mechanism. So like with your typical drugs, whether it's like alcohol or I don't put weed into that category, but
Yeah.
alcohol, uppers and downers, they have this price of admission that's like a hidden sneaky price, which is
Mm,
that you get to feel really good. And because you get to feel really good, it makes you not pay attention to the price, and the price comes afterwards. That
yeah.
crash that comes afterwards. Um, with psychedelics or with sacred plants in particular, um, the price of admission is like before and during.
Yeah.
And so
And that's it.
if you do work before, then you get to enjoy the ride and it'll be very kind to you. If you don't do the work before, then your ride's going to be bumpy, maybe even go straight downhill, and you'll have to pay that price in the moment. But when it's done, you come out of it going like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy to be alive. I'm so
Yeah.
happy I'm still here." Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so people who are addicted or have addictive traits, or people who are narcissistic or have giant egos,
Hmm.
there's this built-in safety mechanism that you can't necessarily abuse these. Now, I'm
Yeah.
sure somebody out there can figure out a way to abuse them,
Sure.
but the general, I think generally speaking, it's very very difficult to abuse sacred plants.
Mm.
They'll make you pay for it if you try. You know.
Yeah, man. They catapult you into a better you. That's for sure. Um, Man, this has been a beautiful conversation. I'm sorry for all the glitches, dude, but I think I'll be able to clean it up, no problem. I've come to a point where I've had to do this a lot. I had to clean up little glitches and stuff. So, um, I'm really appreciative of your time. I'm grateful to have had this conversation, to be podcasting with you, Jim.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. I wish I was more. Uh, I wish I was more entertaining. Typically, I'm more making jokes and laughing a whole lot more. But I was trying to keep my composure.
That's okay. Well, I think we had a great time, man, and people will enjoy it. People are eager to hear another podcast because it's been so long. And look, oh, not anymore. For a second, my backdrop wasn't washed out. But anyways, love you, man. Thanks for doing this.
All right, man. Love you too, buddy. And yeah, talk to you again soon.
Yeah, we'll do this again sometime too, for sure.
All right, brother. Well, you have a beautiful Sunday.
You too. Cactuscon, everyone. If everyone could please like, review, and subscribe to the podcast and hit that share button, we would both appreciate that greatly. Bye.